If you're spending 2 to 3 hours writing a single LinkedIn post just to get 5 likes, you're wasting your time. In my first month on LinkedIn, I used to do the exact same thing, thinking that every post had to be perfect, rewriting sentences that didn't matter like 20 times. Since then, I've grown from 4,000 to more than 415,000 followers. And more importantly, I've helped more than 600 small business owners win on LinkedIn. Now I write posts in 15 to 20 minutes that regularly hit more than 100,000 views. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to do the same thing using AI and proven writing frameworks, so you can stop wasting time and start seeing results. So why do people struggle with their writing? There are really two problems. The first problem is struggling to come up with ideas. Staring at a blank screen every time you want to write something is a total waste of time. And more importantly, you don't have to come up with something totally original for every single post. That is the wrong approach. The second problem is when people have an idea, they don't know how to turn their idea into a post. They don't know the direction of it. And you can make this a lot easier by breaking the writing process in two, into idea generation and into writing, rather than trying to do both of them at the same time. So what I used to do is I would sit down and I think, okay, what am I going to write today? I'd probably spend half an hour just trying to come up with a good idea, and then I'd spend another half an hour rewriting a random sentence in the third paragraph. This is a bad approach. So now what I do is I split idea generation and post writing, and then pick a framework to help write the post. And then I'll use AI to help me get 5 pattern interrupting hook alternatives. So now what I do is I have a running list of ideas, and I have several post writing frameworks that I use all the time. I will put one of those ideas into the post writing framework, and at the end, I'll get a bunch of different hook ideas to help me make sure it really stops the scroll. And the key difference here is separating finding ideas from actual writing. That way you have a system where you eliminate decision fatigue. When you go into a writing session, you can sit down and you know exactly what you're going to write about, and you also know where the story is going because you know the structures and frameworks that you're going to use to write. So now let's go through the 3 frameworks that I use most. Framework 1 is problem, agitate, solution. I use this primarily for educational and awareness posts. Let me give you a quick example to bring this to life. Problem. So a problem might be, I'm not going to hit my quota this quarter. And an agitation related to that would be something like, oh, I feel anxious that I'm going to get laid off. A solution could be, well, I'm just going to double the number of cold calls I'm doing by coming in at 7 a.m. and I'm going to do an extra 2 hours between 7 and 9 a.m. The reason these posts are effective is because it makes people feel something with the agitation. It's that pain that drives people to take action, typically related to your business. So now let's go through a real example of a post that I created. It performed pretty well. It's on the topic of overthinking. It got about 3,500 likes and about 175k views. Let's step through the different parts of this. The problem is that most people are crippled by decisions. They don't actually make decisions. And so the agitation here is that I compare a top performer, someone who makes maybe 10 decisions a day, to someone who's struggling over one decision for months. And it shows the disparity. It shows actually how crippling being indecisive can be for your life. And then the solution here is identifying 4 different ways that you can make decisions faster. Step 1, identifying which decisions are reversible. 2, making reversible decisions really quickly. 3, examining your irreversible decisions very carefully. And 4, having a bias towards action. And then I push people who are maybe indecisive about posting on LinkedIn to my free newsletter at the bottom. And so what it's done is it's created pain. So it's made people feel something and then provided them a solution and given them a free offer which can help them if they so choose. And the biggest mistake I see with this framework is that people don't make people feel something in the hook, and the agitations aren't that relatable. Now moving on to the second framework, which is story, lesson, application. This format is really good for trust building content, which I typically call middle of funnel content, where you're trying to build a deeper relationship with your existing audience. So stepping through this framework, story is really a story from your life or someone you know, or a story you hear that helps make a point. And the point is the lesson. The lesson is what you want someone to take away from this. And finally, you have application. Application is telling people what they can do so that they put the lesson into practice and don't make the same mistakes. Okay, now let's go into a real example. Here's a post I did about the biggest mistake that killed my first business. So the story is really around the fact that I did a few things right in my first business. I solved a real problem, I built what people wanted, and I had customers who were ready to pay. But the problem was that I was selling to people who couldn't afford my services. And at that point in time, I was working in the crypto space, and the businesses I was selling to weren't making enough money to pay me well. So the lesson I left people with there is sell to people who can afford your services and really try and build leverage in your career. And then I move on to the application. How can you actually apply this yourself? And in that, I talk about 3 things. 1, sell to people who can afford you. 2, build systems that can scale beyond yourself. For example, using AI is like having an employee helping you. And 3, build your brand, because that also gives you a ton of leverage. And so you see how we've stepped through the story, my failure, the lesson, which is build leverage, and then the application, which is 3 ways to apply this. And now moving on to my 3rd favorite framework. This is really good for bottom of funnel content. That is content that converts followers into leads and gets people to book a call, sign up for a free trial, whatever it is about to take the next step in their relationship with you. There's really 6 steps in this. The first one is the hook. The hook needs to show the transformation, both in the visual and then also in the text hook. The second part is the before. What was this person or company struggling with when they first met you? Then is after. What results did they get after working with you? And next, what changed? What were the steps that you took together to help get to those results? And the 5th part is having a clear call to action, ideally with some urgency that pushes people to take action today, because people are really busy and they get distracted. And finally, the visual. Most people don't have good visuals with their case studies, and these are a really important part. A good visual with a case study is something like a screenshot of a text message, a screenshot from your community, things that show proof, make people believe the case study. Now let's step through an example. So here's a case study from a Say What user, Jacqueline. The hook is she's getting 500 views, and over 2/3 of a year, she goes from 500 views to 8 to 10K a year revenue. The before situation here is she spent a year posting and she couldn't find her voice or consistent revenue. Afterwards, she has more than 10K followers. And more importantly, she's making consistent good money each month. The next part, what changed? Well, she focused on her ICP. She started writing posts with Say What to help speak more clearly to her ideal audience. And then we have a clear call to action with some authentic urgency. The next 5 new Say What customers get a one-to-one with me. And then finally, we have a super clear visual. It shows metrics, average views before she was using Say What and after half a year of using it. And more importantly, there's 2 messages that she sent me. One before and one afterwards. And what you can see here is that each of these posts takes a clear structure. And now you can really fit any content idea into a framework. So how do I actually use these frameworks? Well, whenever I'm writing a top of funnel post, I will always use the problem, agitate, solution framework for the text post. Whenever I'm writing a story post, I will use the story, lesson, application format. I don't always use the application part, but I always use the first 2. And then whenever I'm writing a case study, I will always use that framework. And what this does is that it stops you having to waste time thinking, because you know the direction that you're going to take your posts in, and it makes writing just way faster. You're not reinventing the direction, you're just filling in the blanks. If you'd like to see exactly how this works, Say What will just write these posts for you with these prompts embedded into them. Plus, there are 600 other creators in the community who are just testing what works on LinkedIn right now. You can try it for free. Just click the link below in the description to get started today. So now let's talk about how to use AI to speed up the process. AI actually does a few things really well. The first thing is generating first drafts based on prompts. It's not good at creating final polished posts just from one prompt. AI is great for structuring your ideas and taking a few rough notes into an actual post. It's also good for varying sentence lengths, shortening and lengthening paragraphs. But what it can't do standalone is inject your unique perspective, personal stories, or your specific experience. And so you need to use it that way. Give AI the framework, so add the framework, add your raw thoughts, and then create your first draft from that. Then when you want to refine it, take the output and add your voice. So what does add your voice actually mean? Let's take me as an example. I use the words so and actually a lot when I speak. So I make sure they're in my writing too. The second thing when you're trying to refine your posts is adding specific examples and stories from your experience. That way you stand out from the AI slop. The final thing is adding personality, which is pretty similar to examples. It's just making sure that there are some comments in the first person in your writing, because then people know it's actually from you rather than just AI rubbish. And after I've done that, I'll then look through the post and make sure there is one consistent through line through the post. Something that I see people often do is they get distracted and go off on tangents while they're writing. So it's really important to cut the fluff while maintaining your voice. So let's bring this to life with an example prompt. Here's one that I use for the problem, agitate, solution framework. The prompt is this: I want to write a post in the problem, agitate, solution framework on topic X, where topic X is usually a problem from a list of problems that my target customers have. The next sentence is please use a pattern interrupting hook. Then after I've got a post and I refined it, I'll always ask for 5 pattern interrupting hooks. And then I'll pick out interesting parts of different hooks that make me feel something. And it's really important that the content makes you actually feel something. Okay, now to the common AI mistakes to avoid. First of all, don't just take an AI generated post and post it directly on LinkedIn. It will sound generic. You need to make sure that it incorporates your experience. Of course, it won't do well if you do that. And there's a bunch of red flags you really need to look out for. The first one is rhetorical questions. AI uses this all the time. The second structure is it's not X, it's Y. The third is corporate jargon and really overly formal language. And finally, you have vague statements that look smart but don't really make sense. That is an absolute telltale sign, although a lot of people do that anyway. So the way that I catch these is I read posts out loud. And if it doesn't sound like me, then I'll rewrite it. I also look out for phrases like game changer, changed everything, or fancy words like leverage. Those are telltale signs, and I actually even have a banned words list. So now you've gone through how to use AI, let's talk about the complete time-saving system. Part one is batching your content. So what I'll do is I'll batch write a bunch of posts at the weekend in like 2 to 3 hours on Sunday. I especially do this for clients. And the reason this works is that when you're in writing mode, you can just keep going and there's no context switching. And the second thing I do is I'll pretty much always have a personal story on Fridays. And the rest of the days, I'll use the problem, agitate, solution framework typically to write my posts. And then I'll usually add a case study as well one day of the week. The final portion of the time-saving framework is how do you find topics to talk about quickly? I've done a separate video just on this, but the key things are looking for trending topics in my niche in Say What. This is incredibly useful and you can see what is already working for people and you can find other outlier content. For stories, I just keep a running notes tab on Apple. And then for case studies, we have a Share Your Wins channel in the Say What community. And so I'll take screenshots from that and post them. The other thing I do is I keep a running list of questions that I get asked in the community and also in one-on-one discussions. And then I'll turn the most asked questions into newsletters and then also sometimes LinkedIn posts. I only really use 3 tools for writing itself. Number 1 is obviously Say What, and then numbers 2 and 3 are ChatGPT and Claude sometimes as backup. So now let's step through the start to finish steps of writing a post in 15 minutes. Step number 1, pick the topic and pick the type of post. And with that, you automatically have the framework. If it's a broader top of funnel post, you use problem, agitate, solution. If it's a story post, you use the story framework. If it's a case study, you use the case study framework. Then I'll get Say What just to write a first draft of the post. And then finally, I'll spend time editing and reading it out loud to make sure that it sounds like me. And honestly, yes, for me, it doesn't take that long because I've done it so many times, but it just gets faster and faster with repetition. You start to get faster at spotting good ideas. You also start to see how frameworks work and figuring out your voice. But let me be clear, it will probably take you a couple months to get to this fast, writing great posts in 15 minutes. In the early days, it would take me like 45 minutes to write a post, but now it's down to 10 or 15 minutes. It just takes time and practice, and you can do it. Use frameworks to eliminate the blank screen problem. Stop reinventing the wheel every time you sit down to write. Use proven frameworks and let AI handle the first draft, and then add the perspective and stories that only you can provide. If you want the exact AI prompts and frameworks that I use to write this kind of content, click the first link in the description below. The frameworks and prompts are inside the Say What community right now waiting for you. Stop spending hours on content that doesn't perform and start writing faster today.